What's up, Net Soldiers on the Alliance, and welcome back to another video, guys. Today we'll be checking out Whatculture's most recent video. Shout out to Jason101. Yes, I think that's the name. Sorry, I'll check later, but I'm pretty sure that's it. For sending me this video on Discord. As you guys might know, on my channel, I actually do this occasional thing where I'll actually kind of review other people's videos. Not to really attack them or to really go against their opinion, but just to kind of see how my opinion versus their opinion. And then we just kind of compare and contrast, and sometimes they are right and I agree with them, and sometimes they're just wrong and I have to fix that. So that's what the whole point of this video is, guys. So if you want to, if you ever see a video that you think that I would probably be a good idea for me to like review or just check out, go to my Discord, make sure to join the Discord, and send me a video, and if I think it is worthy of doing a reaction / review video to it, then I'll check it out. If not, then I won't. But yeah, just let me know. And like I said, check the Discord. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Now with that said, guys, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications for more. This is the single biggest mistakes in each Star Wars movie. So let's see if I agree or if I disagree. Let's do this.
Wars movie has made. 12. The Phantom Menace. The script. Lucas has many talents, but writing dialogue is not among them. He's even been endearingly honest about this over the years, so it's a shame that he didn't just write the story for TPM and let someone else handle the script. Thanks to the writing, it's a pretty wooden story that's as robotic as a Trade Federation battle droid, and is positively drowning in endless exposition, plot holes aplenty, and some iffy attempts at comic relief. What also undermines it is the story's lack of importance to the rest of the franchise. The only significance here is Anakin meeting the Jedi, and since that meeting is so incredibly contrived, the film's story feels rather pointless. And just now, reading this script, I realised that it's going to make me very sad, so I'm going to throw in my favourite thing about each film too. Phantom Menace has the Duel of the Fates. Frickin' awesome tune. Chef's kiss. Mwah. 11. Attack of the Clones.
Okay, now before we go any further, okay, I guess I agree with that. I do think that is something that is overall like known by pretty much any Star Wars fan, is that George Lucas's dialogue isn't exactly the greatest. But like he said, he should have been the one writing the story, doing the story, and maybe having like a storyteller come along with him and kind of help actually write the story. Overall, though, I think it was fine. Yeah, the Phantom Menace could have been better. I think the biggest mistake for me, like he mentioned in this video, is that the Phantom Menace just kind of feels like disconnected from the rest of the trilogy. And the reason for that is because he wanted to really introduce the idea of Anakin joining the Jedi. I still think that this could have been remedied had we made the prequels more based around the Clone Wars. So episode 2 would actually be more like episode 1. We would have a Star Wars movie in between those two, and then we would have episode 3. Now this, of course, would be kind of canceling the Star Wars Clone Wars TV series, unfortunately. So I guess before we had the Clone Wars, I would have preferred this way, but maybe what George Lucas had going on, he had it right. So I guess if there is the biggest issue with the Phantom Menace, it's probably going to be the story itself. So okay, I'll give this to them. I'm kind of like on the fence though, because I don't think it's the worst story. I don't think it's the worst thing that happens to the episode, but I understand where they're coming from, so I'm going to give that one to them.
Anakin and Padme. Attack of the Clones gets more hate than it deserves, since it is actually an entertaining action film, but nevertheless it's easy to see why so many hate it. It's because of this love story. Anakin and Padme's romance is essentially how not to do a film love story. Both Hayden Christensen and poor Natalie Portman, who was pretty badly wasted here, are bad. And the dialogue is also bad, and there's zero chemistry or psychological depth to be found anywhere. In terms of what the worst moments are, Anakin's monologue about how he dislikes sand, and Padme telling Anakin they can't be together are peaks of cringeworthy. Upside though, I love those CIS spider droids with the lasers. The CIS had the best designs.
On the plus, there's spider droids. That's funny. Yeah, so I guess I agree with that one too. I think that could have probably been done better. A lot of that has to go back to the dialogue. I don't have to explain that. Everyone who is a fan of Star Wars knows that the dialogue is just not 100% good. And that's because George Lucas, he's a great storyteller, but his writing of scenes is just a little little wrong, a little not I shouldn't say wrong, but just weird. You know, I guess you could say. So I would agree with them on that. Ultimately, though, the reason why Anakin is so awkward is because he never had to actually deal with his emotions. You know, he hadn't seen Padme for 10 years. The girl he pretty much fell in love with, the girl who was kind of there after his mom left, you know, he just kind of, after he had to leave his mom, and then all of a sudden she's back in his life, and his mom is dying, and he's got so many different emotions that he never had to actually deal with, and now they're all in his face right away in like just a matter of days. So I understand why Anakin has kind of Anakin's part in the second movie has been more understanding to me now when I view it that way. Sorry. When I view it that way, Anakin's point in the entire story, it makes more sense to me now. When I was younger, I'd look at this like episode 2, and I would think to myself like, man, this episode is just the worst. I don't even know if I can finish it. And a lot of it had to do with me not really understanding Anakin's character to the full ability. So once I changed my perspective and I viewed him in that type of form of like, he's a very vulnerable young man. It's not as much as he is a jerk or, you know, awkward. It's legit because he'd never had to handle these type of emotions all at once. And once I looked at it that way, I could understand it more. And I think the movie itself became better. So that part explained, I would say probably he's right. The romance is probably the thing out of that entire film. And there's a lot of things that needed to be fixed, of course, but that would probably be the thing that I would say that needed some tweaking, because it was a little rough. But I would say the Clone Wars TV show kind of it fixed that now. So hey, whatever. All right, on to the next one.
A bad movie. Oh yeah, this movie exists. After seeing the first few episodes of the planned TV series, George Lucas suggested releasing them as a feature film to act as a pilot for the TV show. Still, it is a part of the Star Wars canon and gets an inclusion here. But it's just bad, folks. Come on, this should have been several TV episodes as planned. Structurally, it's a mess, with characters constantly appearing and disappearing, and every set piece feeling like a finale, meaning that the screenplay's roots as a television episode are painfully obvious throughout. Biggest upside though, it gave us the Clone Wars TV show, which was awesome. Also cool to have Christopher Lee back voicing Dooku as well.
Okay, I agree with that one. I can't really say. I've said that in my Star Wars movies ranked video. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But the truth is, the Clone Wars movie isn't as bad as people say, but it does feel like just 3 to 4 episodes of the TV show put together to make a movie, and you can feel that. It feels disconnected. So, I agree with them there. I'm not going to really go into further detail because I think we all know that. All right. Now, like I said, the TV show is great though, so whatever. All right, now we're moving on to Revenge of the Sith. This is the one that the person who messaged me, Jason, he said that this is the one that's probably going to make me most annoyed. So, let's see.
Anakins Downfall not making sense. Revenge of the Sith is the best of the prequel trilogy, but it's still not quite top-tier Star Wars. It expects viewers to buy Anakin not only switching from a decent, well-intentioned Jedi into a child-murdering psychopath in mere minutes, but also suddenly deciding that the Jedi are planning to take everything over based on the words of Palpatine, a Sith Lord. Yes, Anakin thought he could save his wife by going over to the dark side, but this goal shouldn't have changed his entire personality so radically. Also, in this technologically wondrous space future, the chances of Padme dying in childbirth were very small, while the way that Anakin believed Palpatine gave a damn about saving Padme at all was really illogical. Although, I'll be damned if my favourite thing isn't General Grievous doing his thing. I just love this guy, I can't help it.
Okay, yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't really know what the worst thing about Rise of the Sith would be, but I don't think that's necessarily bad. I think Anakin's turn was pretty well explained. I understand people really think, they view it and they say, you know, Anakin turning the dark side was too rushed. And I at one point I understood that, but once you kind of sit back and explore the whole idea of how he's turning the dark side and how the dark side actually works, it becomes more reasonable. So I'm not going to, this could be a long video of me just explaining this entire thing, but I'm going to try to keep it short. So pretty much the dark side is almost like an infection. It latches onto you and then it kind of just stays in there if you don't actually treat it, if you don't battle it, you don't try to, you know, let it out of you. it will stay there. And it will continue to build and build and build. And that's kind of what Anakin did. You know, he let the dark side into him a long time ago. And while he tried to fight it, eventually as time goes on and situations call for it, he would have to call upon the dark side to allow him to victor. And we see this in Clone Wars. Now, of course, that movie wasn't made before the Clone Wars, but you're supposed to infer that a lot of things have happened since Episode 2 and Episode 3, especially with the Clone Wars and Anakin being away from the one thing that pretty much kept him on the light side, which was Padme. The one person he wanted to keep safe was the person that was going to die. He didn't want her to lose. He wanted her to die. So there's a lot of elements that go into it, but eventually Anakin's dark side corrupted him. You know, eventually the infection of the dark side got him. And now, of course, with the dark side, you don't exactly die. You do inside, technically, but when you die inside, you then become the darkness itself. And it's weird because people really don't think about how the dark side works. They just kind of think like, oh, you have a red lightsaber, that means you're a bad guy now. You know, that's not how it works. It's much more complicated than just that. When Anakin chose to save Palpatine, that was the ultimate point on where he was not necessarily full evil at that point, but he realized he's gone past the point of no return. And so now, if he can't do anything about it, now he's going to save Padme. That was his plan, and that's when the dark side was like, we got you. And that's when you see, like, by the time Order 66 comes along and you see him in the Jedi Academy, like, that's no longer Anakin, that's Vader. You know, you can see that type of turmoil on Anakin's face as he's pretty much pledging himself to Palpatine, because he realizes, like, he even says, what have I done? That's when the realization Anakin Skywalker is dying inside of him. You know, he is realizing, oh my gosh, like, there's no return. I now have to do what I have to do. If I'm going to save Padme, things have to happen. And as we saw, Anakin turned into Vader. And of course, the last bit of Anakin was left was with Padme. And of course, things happened and Padme dies. Now, of course, that might have been one of the biggest mistakes. If you're going to say biggest mistakes in Revenge of the Sith, I'd probably say that the biggest one was probably like Padme's death. I do kind of wish there was more explained to why she died. It is hinted at that she actually died because of Palpatine's manipulation, like he killed her through the Force, or he drained her life force to keep Anakin alive long enough to become Vader. Now, that's not actually confirmed, but it is kind of hinted at, so I'm okay with that explanation, but I do think they should have kind of hinted towards that more. Because dying in childbirth when you're this far in the future, you know what I mean? Or I should say this far in the past because it's a long time ago. But if you have that much technological advancement, there has to be a reason for that. So I don't know, I guess Anakin's turn isn't the worst part of the Revenge of the Sith. I think that the worst part is really not knowing why Padme died. I think out of all the things that happened in that movie, yeah, but that's just because I understand the whole situation with Anakin turning. I think once you understand and you change your perspective, like I mentioned about Episode 2, it becomes a better movie. So, there you go. I tried to make that short, but that ended up being longer than it was. So let's continue.
The safest film imaginable. Solo could be argued to be the worst live-action Star Wars film. Why? Because it represents the worst kind of Hollywood filmmaking. It's a safe, risk-free, assembly line movie which does nothing brave, interesting, or unexpected. There are no hysterical jokes, no truly emotional character moments, no heart-pumping action scenes, and, for the most part, not a single memorable moment. There are many other flaws too, like the flat direction and Emilia Clarke's performance, and many talented actors being wasted by the by-the-numbers plot. But the complete lack of surprises was what really killed it. Favourite moments? Gotta be Darth Maul, though.
Okay, I definitely disagree with that one. I think I disagree with that one more than I disagree with the Revenge of the Sith thing. The truth is, I think that, yes, Solo was safe, but I think it was more of like a space adventure than pretty much any of the movies so far. I think it was cool to see all the characters, you know, just kind of do something that has to do with, like, that isn't grand scale. I liked it. It felt like a space serial or something like that. I guess you could say one of those old serials that you would see back in the day, and it feels like that, but in a movie. And I think it captured that pretty well. His favorite part was the Darth Maul. I actually think that was the worst part. I mean, it was cool to see Maul, but ultimately it didn't necessarily need to be in the film. It was just kind of more of a fan service moment. And the issue with that is that people don't watch the TV show. Now, of course, the majority of fans, they are going to watch that movie and go, oh, I know why Maul's back. But when you have the more like subtle fans who get dragged along with the good fans, you know, like the girlfriends, you know what I mean? Not an attack on girlfriends who like Star Wars, but, you know, it's just how it is. You bring your girlfriend to the Star Wars movie and she's like, wait, I thought that guy died in like episode 1. And she doesn't understand. So now you have to explain that. And it's just like, I think that might have been a little bit too far. I mean, I think it was okay. I just think it wasn't needed at all. And then he said about not being able, or there wasn't any twists, and I disagree with that too. There was a lot of twists in that film, especially with the very ending twist when Beckett turns on them and he kills Beckett. Like, that was a twist. I didn't see that coming. I thought that they were actually going to be buddies and maybe Beckett was going to die trying to save Han, but no, he dies a bad guy. And I think that's interesting because Beckett was a chill dude, but you know, he definitely had some issues here and there. I disagree with them. I think that this film was fun. I don't think it was necessarily the most safe film. I think it felt safe because of its story being so small. But I was okay with that. I thought that made it different. So maybe that's just me. I could be completely wrong. But I disagree with him on that one. I don't think that one is right at all.
Characterization problem. Rogue One is pretty awesome overall and suggests an exciting, thematically diverse future for the franchise, but it wasn't all perfect and suffered in particular from its underdeveloped characters. Although the performances are mostly strong, nearly all of Rogue One's characters could have used more backstory and development. It's a sad comment that the only character who feels truly formed and developed is the android K2SO. The biggest problem, though, is Jyn Erso, who is perfectly well played, but just too underwritten to be a great lead. I mean, if you had to describe her in one word, how would you do it? She's kind of just stock character 15 subcategory action woman. Best thing in the film goes to the fanboy orgasm trigger that is the Darth Vader final scene, obviously.
So yeah, the best scene in the film is the Vader scene. Definitely, 100%. I can't fight that one. That one they're completely right about. Now, I think they're also right about the whole, you know, Rogue One. I think Rogue One is a very okay film. I wouldn't ever say it's like great. I think it's fine. I guess if I was going to say like the biggest complaint about it would be the characterization. I mean, I remember by the end of that film, I only knew who, out of the main characters, we had 6 main characters. I only knew K2 because he was, of course, cool. I knew Cassian because he was the male lead, you know, and that's like the first guy you meet pretty much before. I think you meet him before you even meet Jyn. Well, you meet like little Jyn, but then you meet older Cassian. And then I knew Jyn, and I had no idea who the last 3 guys were. Like I've said in my Star Wars movie ranked, like I mentioned, link below. And yeah, it's definitely, there felt like there needed to be more backstory to these characters for me to really, you know, understand them and really care about them, but there isn't. So by the end of the film, I only really cared about Jyn. I kind of cared about Cassian, but not like really, because, you know, I just cared about him because, you know, he cared about Jyn by the end. You know, that was cool. And then I cared about K2 because K2 was the bomb.com, as the kids say. Just kidding. So, yeah, they're right. I'm not going to waste too much time on this because they got it right.
Mark Hamill's performance. With this one, the flaws are almost non-existent. A New Hope is one of the greatest blockbusters of all time and remains a visually stunning, perfectly paced, beautifully told, and wondrously thrilling gem that has lost none of its charm or heart with age. In terms of issues, there isn't much. The dialogue can be clunky, but only occasionally, and for the most part, it is a very well-written blockbuster. The main issue is Mark Hamill's performance as Luke Skywalker. Luke still works in the original trilogy since his arc is so well-written, but Hamill's whiny delivery at times worked hard to undermine all the fine work in the script. Hamill is a legend now, especially in his voice acting work, and he was great in The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, but his performance in the first film remains a little underwhelming. The best bit of this film is the trench run at the end. It's mind-blowing even today. I can't even imagine what it was like in 1977.
Alright, so with that one, I'm going to let you know, my daughter, she just woke up from nappy, so that's why you hear a baby in the background. Apologize for that. I feel like I have to say that in every single one of my videos, but that's the way fatherhood works. Anyways, I'll try to drown out the yelling of her wanting a bottle. What were I saying? Okay, so I guess No, I couldn't say that. I don't think Luke's performance was bad. I never had an issue with Mark Hamill's performance. I think people always complained about that. I think that one was more nitpicking because A New Hope is just such a fun and like legendary movie. There's not much to really complain about. I would say the worst thing about it, if we're looking at it from more a modern point of view, the worst part about it is that it's a more safer film compared to the other films. It's slower, I guess you could say, but you can't do that because it was the original film. So you can't complain about it being that, having that issue, because it's the original film. You know what I mean? I guess if you have to pick something, I guess you would pick Luke's performance, but I just actually wouldn't pick anything, because the film, I wouldn't say is necessarily perfect, but it's so good, and you really can't attack it for anything, in my opinion, because of it being older and for all the things it achieved. So they should have just left that one blank, in my opinion. That's what I'll say. I'll go against them to say they should have left that one blank.
The confusing timeline. Like A New Hope, this movie makes very few mistakes. It is the best Star Wars film. The only issue in particular is the confusing timeline. Luke is evidently on Dagobah for several weeks, while Han Solo and co. are having their escapades on the Millennium Falcon and on Bespin for what is clearly a much shorter time than that, yet the film implies the two events are happening simultaneously. This has always been very confusing and kind of doesn't make sense, and the film offers no explanation. Still, this movie is pretty much perfection on a plate. There are too many great moments to choose for a single one, but this is the film that gave us seagulls. So yeah, I'm going with Yoda's bad lip-reading musical number for the best thing to come out of this one.
Okay, I disagree with that one too. Okay, so, kind of. Okay, so I think it was another one, like with The New Hope, they kind of nitpicked something. They needed something, so they picked it. You know what I mean? For me though, I have to be honest here. I think the worst thing about The Empire Strikes Back is is plot B. And I mentioned this in my Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back review, and I went into fuller details. So if you want to hear more of my explanation on it, check out that video. I'll leave that in the description below as well. But I think that plot B of this film was just rough. And what I mean by plot B was while Luke was training with Yoda on Dagobah, that was plot A. That was the story we wanted to follow. In order to give Luke time to get some training in and kind of like learn more stuff from Yoda, we needed to have our characters doing something else. And that entire subplot is just kind of boring to me. It feels like filler. And people might roast me. I understand that. People don't like when you attack The Empire Strikes Back. And I'm not necessarily attacking it. I'm just kind of pointing out something that I feel like people are afraid to point out, or people have noticed it, but they don't want to say it because they're afraid they're going to get destroyed on YouTube for stuff. But that's what I'm known for. I'm known for being more controversial with my opinions on Star Wars. And so I got to say, that's probably the worst part of my opinion. Now, the best part, of course, I think the movie is still really good. Plot B is rough. Even if it isn't necessarily like good for me, it's not terrible. I just think it feels like fillerish, and I don't really like that. But hey, that's just my opinion. But as far as the best thing goes, I definitely would say the movie itself is probably the best thing. It's just that part. It's rough. And I think people are too afraid to admit it. Like I said, if you want even more explanation on that, check out that video in the description. Now let's move it on. I'm going to see if I can get this done a little quicker. I'm kind of taking too much time here.
Jedi, the childish tone. There's no doubt that this was most people's favourite of the OT when they were younger, but as one grows older, the cracks show more and more with each rewatch. Return of the Jedi is still good, and occasionally brilliant, but it lacks the power of the first two films, and has the worst script of the original trilogy, mainly because the tone is so childish and silly. The long stretches on Endor with the Ewoks are occasionally fun, but mostly just goofy, especially on a rewatch. It's still a fun watch, but these days Return of the Jedi does just come in a bit short of being a masterpiece. Best moment is Luke's confrontation with Vader and Palpatine. Just awesome.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I actually agree with that one completely. Return of the Jedi used to be my favorite when I was a kid. Before Rise of the Sith came out, of course. That used to be my favorite Star Wars movie. And I think most of that had to do with the lightsaber fight at the end of the film. But as time has gone on, and I've rewatched the movie as I'm older, it definitely feels like it's definitely the weakest of the original trilogy. It's not necessarily bad, but it is the weakest. And The whole Endor scenes, it's just, that feels like pure filler. Like I mentioned about the Han and Leia's plot in Empire Strikes Back feeling like filler. In this film's, the Endor scenes are all just filler to me. They just don't feel real, I guess you could say, which sounds weird, but they feel like they were thrown in there because they really didn't know how to stretch out the screen time with the rest of the story. Like I said, maybe that's just me, but that's how I feel. I mean, I love Ewoks, don't get me wrong, but it does feel like filler.
Remaking A New Hope. The Force Awakens is an excellent movie and
Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on The Force Awakens here because I agree with this. It was a safe film, that's what they're going to say, and there was more that they could have done with it. J.J. Abrams was given the order to give a Star Wars movie that would be returned to form for the Star Wars franchise, because at the time Disney thought that everyone hated the prequels. They've soon discovered that was a completely incorrect way of thinking, but so they wanted to try to do a return to form, and that's what he was supposed to do. And I think that overall he could have delivered a more original story, but he didn't. So with that said, let's move on to episode 8 here. Now this one's going to be interesting.
Last Jedi, the Canto Bight subplot.
Okay, yeah, he got it. I mean, some people would say The Last Jedi itself is just the worst part. But for me, the Canto Bight, man, the interesting thing was, I remember back when this movie came out, and when Star Wars movies come out, every Star Wars movie, it seems like, it's usually beloved by the majority of people, but then as time goes on, people see the cracks in the movies, and then they go deeper into them. I actually have a review on this movie, so check that out in the description below as well. The truth is about this film is that it does have some really interesting moments, but the Canto Bight scene, ever since the movie came out, it didn't sit well with me. That is the pure filler, the filler scene. I mentioned filler in Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, and even Attack of the Clone had some filler with Anakin and Padme just kind of rolling around in the fields, but Canto Bight is filler incarnate for me. And it can't be excused, so I'm just going to let that one go. I already knew they were going to say something along these lines, so I agree with them. I don't even know what else he's going to say. He's got a whole like 2 minutes dedicated to explaining The Last Jedi, but I already know what he's going to go with. I know where his point of view is coming from, so there you go.
Rise of Skywalker, the rushed pace. The Rise of Skywalker is overall a good film, and it wraps up the saga in a satisfying, emotionally resonant way, but it has its flaws and the mixed reactions are understandable. The film's biggest failing is how fast-paced it is. Important scenes are rushed through and many things were left unexplained. There was an easy fix though. This should have either followed the example of Avengers Endgame and been a 3-hour film, or it should have been split into 2 and make the saga a 4-episode one instead. There was a better film lurking within, as the story is pretty strong, but it just wasn't fleshed out enough thanks to how fast everything moved. Obviously, the best moment goes to seeing my boy Palpy back in the action again. Love that guy.
Do I agree with that one? Yes. Yes. I think Rise of Skywalker's biggest issue for its story was that its story was rushed. It needed more time to tell that story. It was a very deep and compelling story somewhere in there. It just needed more time. I think the film honestly would have actually been improved more if you would have had an extra half hour at least. I don't know about the two-parter. I guess I'd be okay with that, but I would prefer to keep it a trilogy because of the previous films. Just for now, the next saga can do whatever it wants, but I think that just keeps it like more cohesive feeling. But an extra 30 minutes would have helped that movie just kind of give itself more time, let the pacing kind of go, and I do agree with them there. I also think that one thing that would have improved was at the ending, if we would have saw our Force ghosts, if Anakin would have popped back and did something, if Anakin and Luke would have at least maybe talked, we could have saw that in the 30 minutes they would have included. There's a lot of potential that was ultimately wasted with The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, you could say that about the sequel trilogy altogether, but there's a lot of stuff that was wasted that could have been improved upon, but they didn't, and that is the way it is. So there you go, guys. That is my opinion on this video. I think ultimately I agree with a lot of their stuff, but I also disagree with a lot of it too. So what do you guys think? Do you think that they were 100% right? Do you think they were wrong? What type of things do you agree with them? What type of things do you disagree with them? Let me know in the comments below. Like I said, guys, if you see any future videos that you think that on any channel that you think that I would do a pretty good job reviewing, kind of seeing how my opinion would differ from theirs, let me know in the comments below. And for more videos, please remember to like, subscribe, and notifications for more. But with that said, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.